through my activities over this last even 6 months alone, I've met 3 businesses who have all struggled. They've got a great product. Everything's been designed here. It's been invented here. It's been prototyped here, but all the manufacturing is going to go abroad. Because every time they've looked for support from government, or every time they've applied for what they need to do in order to manufacture it here, they've hit stumbling blocks. And that's absolutely ridiculous.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Advanced Engineering Talks, a podcast created by the Advanced Engineering team. A Talks brings together some of the newest and most innovative minds in engineering and manufacturing to help better the future for our industry. We hope you enjoy the series.
Hello and welcome everybody, Jeremy Whittingham here. I'm once again delighted to bring you to another Advanced Engineering Talks podcast where innovation never sleeps. And I'm delighted again today to introduce a well-known precision engineering firm director, and I would say increasingly manufacturing industry influencer, if you like. She is director of Honor Precision, the supplier and manufacturer of tubular components using the latest deep hole boring, drilling, honing and CNC turning technologies. And she is someone who's truly passionate about raising the profile of UK manufacturing. In fact, she has been for some time now. She is Andrea Wilson. Andrea, welcome to Advanced Engineering Talks.
Thank you, Jeremy, and thank you for inviting me on.
Pleasure. Yes, thanks for joining us. And as I say, you've been consistent for some years now, and I think a lot of people on social media, maybe LinkedIn, will have seen you being very vocal, which is great, in terms of pushing for government and industry, not only to raise the profile of manufacturing, but for the government itself to recognise the importance of the sector for much needed growth in the UK economy through real investment and support, including concrete things like specifically having a dedicated minister or champion for within the government. I mean, what's been the background and drive behind your campaign here, if you like, Andrea?
Well, I guess it all started 30 years ago when I joined Honor. And I saw an industry that I'd never been aware of before, I'd never understood before, and realised just what an amazing industry it was, what the talent was within it, the passion within it. All these products that were coming through this little tiny workshop that were going to end up in various places like cars or planes or washing machines or even manufacturing your Maltesers. But I also saw at that point also how that the industry, particularly in the SMEs, had missed this element of marketing and customer service. You know, back in the day, we're talking sort of 1994 now, people picked up the phone and went, what? You know, whereas I'd come from a sales role where you pick up the phone, good morning, sir, how can I help?
Yes.
And I think that was the first thing I brought with me, was that sales sort of approach to it, and also then an understanding and a passion for actually saying, right, okay, we do this so well, why aren't we ever talking about it? How come nobody knows about it? Yeah. And so sort of over the last 25, 28 years, I have been volunteering in a variety of ways and sat on a lot of various panels and boards, ranging from Regional Development Agency, Automotive Academy, National Skills Academy for Manufacturing, Centre. I could reel them off. And particularly the last 15 years with EEF/Make UK, I was a regional chair for 10 years. And throughout all that time, I've tried desperately to get the SME voice across, about how the majority of the decision making and policy informing that I am seeing is coming from much larger businesses, much sort of, you know, more OEM type businesses, which, don't get me wrong, we wouldn't be surviving without them. They have their say, they have their needs.
Yes, of course.
When they're speaking on behalf of businesses that are 1,000th of the size of them, or businesses who have owner managers that are basically working 18 hours a day to not just run the machine, but then do the invoicing, marketing. When do I have time to breathe? Never mind market. You know, the needs are very, very different. And it's become very frustrating, particularly, you know, if you look at the apprenticeship levy, that's a prime example.
Yeah.
it worked very, very well for some of the bigger businesses. Yes, I know they didn't particularly like paying for it in the first place, but they found a way to maximise what they can get from it. But it's decimated apprenticeships, particularly through SMEs. The government are now bringing in ways that, you know, that funding will be able to be utilised, but who knows what we'll get after the next election. But, you know, 25 years later, 30 years later, we're still all saying the same things.
Yes.
We have a skills gap. You know, technical training is not sufficient. We are struggling to basically attract and recruit. And it's not just about attracting diversity, it's about attracting anybody, attracting talent, you know, because the industry still has this outdated perception that we're dark and dirty, you know, 100%. And there are very, very few engineering businesses now that are dark and dirty. You know, we're high tech, you know, industry 4, we've been using for 10, 15 years before it even became a buzzword. And we're only a 42 strong person company in Leighton Buzzard.
And it's interesting what you say about the skills and the skills gap as well, and the perception of manufacturing. Certainly, we were talking about that in a previous podcast as well, in terms of, you know, getting those getting people and parents of children even to understand how the importance of STEM education and the high level of technology. I mean, take something like, you know, coding, programming, software engineering. A lot of young people are looking at that in terms of, yes, I might take that into financial technology or something like that, and not thinking about actually manufacturing and engineering is a really exciting place to go with those sort of skills as well. And I feel, again, it's been a little bit in terms of services rather than the manufacturing that has been given the priority there, and you know, battery technology, automation, some really exciting stuff that people can be getting into for skills development. And I think both them and perhaps their parents even think that there's, you know, that the engineer, or not engineering, it's a bit mucky, you know, and perhaps you can do financial technology or these other things that you might be able to do with software engineering. So there's lots of great opportunities and exciting well-paid careers in manufacturing, I think, that need to be you know, fed to schools and to people in general as well, right down to firing the imagination of children, which I think would support this investment and growth that we want.
But wages within manufacturing are sort of 12% higher than the average.
Exactly.
But also people aren't aware of the different varying roles that you can have within engineering and manufacturing.
Yes.
You know, when I go into schools, I speak about who enjoys what. So we put hands up. Who enjoys checking other people's work? Who loves criticising the teacher when what they've written on the blackboards or the whiteboards are not quite correct? Well, me. Guess what? In manufacturing, you could have a career in contract review. You could be paid £60,000 a year just to check people's work. You know, who like shopping. Oh, yeah, you can earn £50,000 to £60,000 a year being a buyer. You spend other people's money for a living. You know? Who likes maths, accountancy, £100,000 a year in engineering and manufacturing. You can see the students sit there going, what? Wow, what? You know, because we break it down to like £1,000 a week, £250 a day, and they sort of go, holy hell.
That's a great idea. Sorry, go ahead.
It's just that educational piece, which unfortunately is just not there, you know. Within this industry, you have every role, and every role is just as important, from the person who's doing the maintenance and the cleaning, to the IT, to the sales, to the accounts, to the marketing, all of it. It's an industry that needs every one of those. It's a bit like our machines. If one part of that machine breaks, the machine breaks down.
Yeah. Do you feel that that's starting to, it sounds great that you're going into schools to do that. I mean, do you think that you're almost a one-off, or do you think that's happening more and more in the schools? And is it sort of going into the ethos of the teaching as well, or is that still a lot of work to be done there?
Oh, there's a whole host of work to be done. There's a lot of people willing, there's a lot of people trying. Unfortunately, the schools very rarely have the resource or the time. The teachers themselves are not aware of the opportunities within engineering and manufacturing. The the last school I went into, I was so inspired because all around the walls were inspiring women in engineering.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And lots of work about STEM, lots of posters and the students' work. And my first question was, what does STEM stand for? And nobody could answer me.
Oh, really? Right.
You know,
It's not good.
No, it's not. We shouldn't be doing this to tick a box because the school's been told we have to do this. We should be doing it to really educate and change perceptions. But, you know, as an industry, we share responsibility for that. You know,
yes.
I'm trying, as part of the campaign that we have for this manufacturing champion, I'm trying to get this central resource up and running, so that engineering and manufacturing businesses can basically access everything they need within one place, whether it be educational resources for schools, whether it's funding support for what's available in their area, networking groups, trade associations, and have somewhere where all of this information can be found in one place. Because as an industry, we're so fragmented and our voices are so diverse, but also we're creating so much noise rather than one strong, coherent message. And, you know, what I'm hoping for from this central resource, we will have a coherent message. We'll be able to load case studies of great people, you know, inspiring people within the engineering and manufacturing industry. We can load great businesses, best practice, images, flood it with images of what this industry is like now. Because if you search on Google, most of the images are 20, 30, 50, 80 years out of date.
Yeah.
And so we've got to share our responsibility in that, you know.
Yeah, understood. One thing which is really unique about the UK, isn't it, I think, is we are a leader in this high IP rich kind of engineering and manufacturing. We have some of the world's top universities, top R&D. And again, it's kind of linked to what we're talking about, I think, is we're great at innovation here, actually. And a lot of the innovation, you were talking about SMEs earlier as well, and getting their voices out. A lot of the innovation comes from that sort of part of the industry as well. And I feel that one way this could all fit together more is you know, really trying to leverage that and commercialize and be better at commercializing some of these innovations that we come across in the UK, which we haven't always been good at. And it's something that we try and do at the Advanced Engineering Show with our Enabling Innovation Zone and Innovate UK and so on. But is that something that you think would be a really good path that we need to work on in terms of commercializing innovation?
Massively, because at the end of the day, you know, this is why I think we're failing with this lack of, whether you want to call it an industrial strategy or whether you want to call it a plan for growth, as in, you know, for engineering and manufacturing specifically. I don't like the term advanced manufacturing plan because, in all honesty, I think it's quite, people tend to think that only applies to the very top level, high end.
Fair point. Yeah.
And it misses out an awful lot of that supply chain. But because we are such a great nation of innovators and inventors and entrepreneurs, and government should be encouraging that. And that's why we need this engineering manufacturing champion. Somebody, a minister, I don't think is powerful enough. We need this commissioner or this trade body board, somebody, a leading light, a guiding light that is actually going to unite all of these factors together and say, if we just approach this in a way that you would approach running a business, we are going to fly. We can make hundreds and hundreds of billions of pounds, because all it needs is some thought and bringing the industries together, looking at the supply chain and making sure the supply chain is there to support it with the long-term plan to make sure that we're not beholden to any other nation moving forward.
Well, I mean, this should also chime with some of the things that the big geopolitical and global issues and pandemic issues that we have been and continue to experience, and that a lot of people are talking about in terms of the supply chain and the visibility of the supply chain in terms of where things have come from, in terms of also ESG and circularity that the OEMs are desperately need to know from their supply chains. Well, surely that also fits in with perhaps to some extent. I mean, reshoring is the word that some people use, isn't it? In terms of supply chain resilience and security. Plus, you probably have a bit more knowledge of the sustainability of where things have come from and not being shipped for huge distance. So surely that ought to play into what the governments, whoever that, what their pressures are about, meeting targets of net zero, you would hope. I don't know if people have been attaching the two together, but anyway, clearly not.
I mean, it's James Heapy, if I pronounce his name correctly, made a speech at the MTA dinner, and he basically said, your national sovereignty depends on your ability to manufacture. International partners, yes, we need to work with our international partners.
Yeah.
But we need to make sure that as a country we are safe, secure, resilient, able 100%. To provide what we need to provide. And protect the people that are doing that. This campaign started really for this manufacturing minister, commissioner. The terms have changed over the time, and the main reason the name or title has changed is because people have become so disillusioned with the term minister, so they wouldn't support the campaign. So that's why I've changed it to champion. But what we're after is basically trying to make sure that we are able to bring everyone together, everything together. This campaign started in COVID because the ventilator challenge, for once, we were actually being recognised. We were being seen for our contribution. The government were actually acknowledging what manufacturers were doing to help with an issue that they couldn't resolve from abroad because they couldn't react and get it here quick enough. So it taught us a very big lesson, and that's when I knew, as much as I've been fighting for various aspects of this over the last 3 decades, that was my time when I thought, yes, now's the time we have a chance to be heard. But frustratingly, it should have been the opportunity. It could have been the opportunity. But as always tends to happen with these things, the businesses that were initially supporting this campaign and really sort of being involved got very busy again, and people end up having to focus on their business.
It's difficult. It's difficult.
It is, and it's a real struggle to keep finding the time to balance between business and campaigning, because I now do 99% of my LinkedIn campaigning in my own time because I have a day job to do. I cannot distract away from the job that I do as an employee of Tonal Precision Limited.
Sure. Yeah. So, I was going to ask, how do you manage it? to juggle the
with great difficulty at times, and thanks to a very patient husband. Because thankfully he likes golf and he likes watching football, so he doesn't mind me being on LinkedIn when he's basically doing various hobbies. But I have promised him that if nothing changes within 6 months of the new government forming, that I will hand this over to somebody else, because it does take a lot of time and effort, and it's great when people jump on board. It's absolutely so inspiring. But it's also so very frustrating when so many people say, we need this, we want this, we have to get this, we have to do that, and then don't back it up with any action.
Sure.
I think the petition in the early days was a great example. Unfortunately, when we launched the petition again, the general election was then called, so it was stopped because they cancelled all petitions. But we still only got 1,100 signatures, and yet 30,000 people have engaged with those posts. So
how many is it now that is needed for it to be looked at? Is it
10,000 for a reply?
Right.
Which is a 3-line thank you. 100,000 to have it debated in Parliament.
Okay. And I mean, I was going to ask you again as well. You mentioned the government and the new government, and I think we're seeing how things are looking without saying anything specific. I mean, how optimistic or otherwise might you be about that? And have you got have certain sides, at the moment between Labour or Conservative or other members of Parliament shown better traction with your campaign than others? And do you have hope and optimism going forward in the next couple of weeks?
I try not to be political as part of my campaigning.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? Yeah.
However, I will say that it was very lovely to hear, and I will leave it at that, but it was very lovely to hear from a senior politician that industrial strategy is not a nicety, it's a prerequisite.
Yes, good. Yeah, yeah.
And for me, that speaks volumes. Talking about coherence and cooperation in order within the industry to make sure that we're actually driving it in one direction through an industrial strategy. So for me, that was certainly more hopeful than I've seen from our current government. And I have to say, I was quite disappointed with a few of the replies I had from my local candidates, because I've emailed everyone.
I saw that on your LinkedIn. Yeah,
4 out of 12 have replied, and one of them said that he couldn't really reply to my request to support the campaign until he'd done further research. Well, within a month of the election, if you don't know your policies and your party's plans, then really you don't deserve my vote. And another one, I had to stop actually mentioning who had and who hadn't supported or replied, because one particular party candidate got very antsy about the fact that somebody mentioned that he'd not replied to her email. Well, if you're going to be so precious and tell us how busy you are campaigning when we're busy running our businesses, and we're fighting to not just survive but thrive. So we take time out of our day to engage with our local candidate because you're asking for our vote.
Yeah.
If you can't reply to us, then do you deserve our vote? But more importantly, if you're going to take umbrage at the fact that somebody said you haven't replied, do you really have the strength of character to represent the people who vote for you?
Yeah.
It's that at the end of the day,
I agree.
Politicians are public servants, not self-servants, and that's how it should be.
Yeah.
So people know who to vote for. They know what their local candidates are saying. They're watching the various, debates, etc.
So. There's been a lot. I saw it on your LinkedIn as well. There's been a lot of bodies who have been shouting about things. You mentioned like the Crow Manifesto, Make UK Makers Manifesto, and I think more recently the Institute for Public Policy Research, which is, saying the UK is significantly behind the nearest competitor in the G7 group of wealthy nations. It couldn't be more. In some ways, it couldn't be more plain to see. I think part of it as well that perhaps is simply a bit of consistency as well. There's been so many changes of individuals and so on in government, and I also wonder, whether some of the people who come in have not had the right sort of the most appropriate background, and an understanding of what manufacturing is and so on. I hope that's something, no matter who's in, that can be sort of brought in, somebody who has perhaps a bit of a background in the manufacturing industry as well. Yeah, obviously, if you're getting if you do get a manufacturing champion, then they would be anyway.
That's the plan. I think we've realised that we've supposedly been given a Minister for Manufacturing on a number of occasions over the last few years.
Right.
The most recent of which was asked, "We hear you're our Minister for Manufacturing," and he basically said, "I have many titles." So not dedicated. Exactly. So I think we've realised that a champion or a leader or a Secretary of State for manufacturing is really what's necessary, because we need politics to stay out of it. We need this person to be experienced, knowledgeable, passionate. We need them to understand the industry and the differing needs, because the OEMs have a type of need. Your innovators have a need, the SMEs have a need, and this one-size-fits-all approach is strangling growth. We are wasting billions and billions of support in mechanisms and delivery vehicles for these support systems, where so much administration is lost, so much money is being spent and not getting through to the people who it's going to benefit. We need a full review of the industrial support packages that are out there at the minute. Rishi Sunak said 18 months, 2 years ago, why should I increase spending on support for UK manufacturing? He said most of it's not taken up now. So it's like, of course it's not, because people don't know about it, or it's too complex, or it's not fit for purpose, or it doesn't actually make sense, like applying for a grant for a new piece of capital equipment because you want to increase your productivity. But in order to get that grant, which is the equivalent of, let's say, 20 grand, you have to show that you're going to employ 2 new people. I don't want to employ 2 new people. I'm trying to not employ 2 new people by buying a better machine that will remove the need for the people, so would increase my productivity. So don't tell me I have a productivity problem when you're trying to create a productivity problem in the way that your funding works.
That's very formulaic and fixed in its ways, isn't it? And
when we had regional development agencies, particularly within EDA, which is the only one I have not full knowledge of, but an awareness of, we were targeted with a particular return on investment. I believe at the time it was 4-1. EDA was achieving around 6-1. Now, I know a lot of RDAs were spending a lot more than that and not making very much. But again, it's a one size fits all. Why did we change the whole structure for the 2 or 3 that were failing? Why doesn't government say, right, they are demonstrating best practice, roll that best practice out to the other regions? The same happened with the LEPs. The same happened with Manufacturing Advisory Service. When it changed into being held and managed by consultants, in some areas, it still worked absolutely brilliantly. And we still have one mass left down in the southwest run by a fantastic man called Nick Golding, Right. But there were other regions where basically the money and the blood was sucked out of it by people effectively saying, oh, no, I can't run a training course for you, Mr. SME, because I need at least 15 people on that course in order to make my daily rate. So I can't go with you because you've only got 16 people in total and you can't give me 15 in a day.
Yeah.
Again, it's not possible. It just doesn't work,
Yeah, so there are nuances and differences that those sort of things can only be looked with and with somebody that has the bandwidth more to dedicatedly sort of look at them, like a manufacturing champion, I suppose, isn't it? Because not somebody who's trying to spin plates with other titles at the same time. It's just not going to happen anyway, is it?
One particular example of a mainstream funding support route that there is at the moment takes 5 levels of administration to sign off an advert. Now, how many salaries is that for an advert that costs?
Yeah, that's ridiculous, isn't it?
There's no accountability. There's no requirement for a return on investment. It's just broken, and we could save. My biggest thing is, when the government look at us and we're asking for this particular thing to keep going with no more money. I don't want more money. I want you to spend the money better, because then you can save some money and you can still generate more money, because you will achieve growth by basically spending that money wisely rather than throwing it on these 16 people who are all required to say whether you can get a grant or not. You don't 16 people. If I had 16 people to send a quote in my business, I'd be bankrupt in the first 3 weeks.
Yeah. Absolutely. And of course this is the rock and a hard place that they know that, and we all know that we're in, is like people are worrying about taxes will have to be raised for public services because we're not producing enough, or we need to grow the economy more. Well, this is what you're saying, well, here's how we do that, grow the economy more, because people aren't going to be wanting to be taxed in the next few years. And that's what a lot of people are worried about, especially, the sort of perception of a Labour government and so on. But we need more growth.
Let's look at how they're funding colleges at the moment. A particular local college close to me had £5 million worth of LEC funding to create an engineering centre. It still has no engineering in it 5 years later.
But so what's happened there, for instance?
There's some construction training happening in it, but there's no engineering in it. And basically, you know, we're looking at colleges who can't find tutors to train students. They don't have Milton Keynes College. The last time some of my team visited to look at careers, etc., had got a load of machines with sheets over them saying that they're no good to us now because they're not the same controls as our clients are asking us to train on. Well, okay, why do we keep having this equipment? Why do we keep having this funding? Why not have a training and development tax credit, a bit that functions a little like an R&D tax credit, and basically we can claim for a proportion of wages, a proportion of materials, a proportion of tooling, you know, and time spent training. And that is graded on how transferable those skills are. So for us, for example, if I was training somebody in admin and accounts, it's exceedingly transferable. I could claim a higher level of rebate on my corporation tax.
Yeah.
However, if I'm training someone to hone, there's not another honing company around here, you know, so that only a small level, because I'm still taking somebody who's unskilled and turning them into skilled. I have the equipment, I have the people, I have the skills. Not only that, I have the ability and the environment to show what a proper workplace is, what is required to be a valuable member of a team and to contribute to the economy and to earn a good living and then get a mortgage and blah, 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 and all the things that, you know, the cycle of life brings. That's all here. You don't get that in a classroom when your tutors are basically either not qualified to teach or they don't have the equipment to teach on. Those tutors that are still left, let them come out, visit the companies like they used to in the old MVQ level 2 and 3 days when they come in on site and they'd sign off the coursework. Come in and verify it, because then you'll never have the fraud that supposedly the SMEs were all perpetuating with the R&D tax credits, which again, I find absolutely ridiculous, because if we were all clever enough to defraud the system, we wouldn't have been paying the consultants we were paying who were earning 20% of it. We could do so very much with so very little if just somebody listened. Yeah. And I think that's one of the biggest calls is, you know, the panels and debates I sit on around the tables now with the smaller businesses, the people who are employing up to 100, the content is so very different to those who are 250 but are still called an SME, you know.
Right.
10 to 50 you have a much different need. 50 to 100 there's a different need. And a lot of these SMEs that are in these sort of what classed as a higher position of power tend to be the much larger SMEs, you know. Right. And also, you know, on the government's current outgoing government, on their business council, their representative for SMEs was a chap who ran Sage Software.
Right, there you go.
How does he represent SMEs? I'm confused.
Yeah, that kind of chimes back to what I was saying earlier about the sort of people that are involved, you know, and their background. It's just doesn't fit necessarily, does it? Yeah, really interesting. Andrea,
sorry to depress you.
No, well, but there's a lot. There's a lot. But
this is a starting point. You see, this is as low as it goes. We can do nothing but go up from here if we just get the right support and the right industrial strategy plan, whatever somebody wants to call it. You know, if we bring the industry together, unite the voices, we can fly.
Well, you've probably answered this question, which I'll ask anyway, is as we start to come to the close of our discussion anyway, is you know, for people who are listening to this podcast, of course, they might be from all sorts of organisations. Perhaps it depends, really. What do you think is the one thing that they should, you know, take away from this to say, right, I'm going to do something to help kick this off, or if they haven't already, or to support? Would you say?
I think look at who your local candidates are and look at what they're campaigning on in terms of the general election. Yeah. And in just over a week's time, when the new government is beginning to be formed, make sure you engage with your successful candidate, put your points across about the industry, what it needs, how it needs to be, because the more people we have asking this question, within the corridors of power, the less they can ignore it. But we need to all muck in. So just like in an SME, when the excrement is hitting the fan and the F1 car's stuck on the track and it needs that part delivering at 4 a.m. in the morning, and everybody mucks in the same way we did with the ventilator challenge, and people were making parts that they'd never made before because it just had to be done. We all need to muck in and actually fight for our industry, stand up for our industry, and ask for approaches that suit the different types of businesses that make us up, because we are massively diverse, in terms of size, in terms of geography, in terms of level of technology that we employ. And if we brought in a manufacturing advisory service as it was when it was first formed, which was usually led in the main by the sort of universities, like ours originally was Cranfield,
right.
And basically that went out and actually spoke to businesses and brought in common sense, not quick fix, but simple fixes that made a huge difference. That for me, we transform, and a T&D tax credit, we transform this industry within 2 to 3 years.
Yeah. See, that's great to hear. So we can do it. It can be done. Yeah.
Absolutely. You just need somebody who's willing to challenge what's always been. It's that great old saying, my lads hate me here when I keep going on about it. If you always do what you always did, you'll always get what you always got. and that's
well, true.
But it's what we've been seeing in this industry for decades, and we need to change it. We need to up our game, and with the right support from government and the right somebody listening, we can do it easily. Yeah,
I totally agree. Well, there you are. I mean, you say you didn't want to depress me, but actually, on that note, you've bucked me up a bit there. I'm much more optimistic in terms of what we can do. Thank you for that. We have to come to an end, Andrea, but thanks for a great conversation. We wish you continued success at Honall, and also in this campaign, which I should say is something we should all be part of, and hopefully we can talk further, Andrea, about what we can do at Advanced Engineering to reflect this, because the whole ethos of what we do at Advanced Engineering is all about the whole dynamics of what you've been talking about, is bringing both new innovation but also the existing supply chain the opportunities to grow and for the UK manufacturing and engineering sector. So we want to increase the recognition of manufacturing at the highest levels of government going forward, which is basically what your campaign is about, and indeed the perception within the country in general. So I hope we can chat further about that. So thank you to Andrea Wilson, Director at Honall Precision Limited, and one of the key industry players spearheading the rise of manufacturing in the UK. To listen, thank you everybody at home who's listening, or home in the office who's listening to the podcast. To listen to other episodes, please feel free to visit our website at www.advancedengineeringuk.com. And thanks for listening. Goodbye to everybody. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.